This is the disturbing GTA 5 Iceberg Explained. Tier 1, Trevor's torture scene. The FIB, which is Rockstar's version of the FBI, just dragged some guy named Mr. Karamov into a warehouse. They think he knows something about a terrorist they're trying to hunt down. You're playing as Trevor, one of the main characters in the game, and your job is to make Karamov talk. You expect an interrogation scene where you're just asking questions, but instead the game hands you a toolkit.
Sparky!
That includes waterboarding equipment, jumper cables, pliers, and a wrench. Now, most GTA missions let you watch violence happen in a cutscene, giving you some distance from what your character does. But for this mission, you have to pick up the controller and do it yourself. When you hold down the button to pour water over Karamov's face, you control how long it lasts. When you pull the trigger on the jumper cables to electrocute him, you decide when to let go. The mission drags on longer than you'd expect to. You torture Mr. Karamov multiple times, extracting different pieces of information while he screams and begs. He's been willing to cooperate from the very beginning, but the FIB agents keep demanding more details, so the torture continues. After about 10 minutes of making the poor guy suffer, Trevor drives him to the airport instead of killing him. During the car ride, he launches into a long speech about how torture doesn't actually work because it's unreliable, and people will say whatever they think you want to hear.
You're a torture advocate!
Advocate?
The media and the government would have us believe that torture is some necessary thing. We needed to get information, to assert ourselves. Did we get any information out of you?
It's supposed to be political commentary. Rockstar's way of criticizing how the American government used torture techniques like waterboarding on suspected terrorists after the September 11th attacks in 2001. During the attacks, terrorists flew planes into buildings and killed thousands of people. The government didn't want anything like it to ever happen again, so they started capturing suspects and using torture to get information about future attacks and terrorist networks. Trevor's speech is meant to condemn those real-world practices. Problem is, you've just spent 10 minutes actively participating in torture, and now the game turns around and lectures you about why it's bad. Freedom from Torture, a British charity that works with torture survivors, publicly condemned the mission when GTA 5 launched in 2013. Even critics who praised the rest of the game said this specific scene crossed the line and completely messed up its intended message. Murder mystery. It's 1975, years before Franklin was even born, and a woman's body has just been discovered behind the Land Act Dam in Blaine County, a rural area outside Los Santos. Her hands and feet have been severed and switched to opposite sides. Parts of her face are missing. A star has been burned into her back with cigars, and the word ham is written in blood on a piece of her thigh placed beside the body. Her name is Leonora Johnson, and for decades in the game's timeline, nobody knew who her killer was. Leonora was a fictional aspiring actress in the GTA world who moved to Los Santos as a teenager in the late 1960s to chase her dreams of becoming a star. She worked as a waitress before landing her first real film role in 1973 as a disabled prostitute in a movie called Rum Runner. She was being considered for a lead role in another film when Peter Dreyfuss, a famous Vinewood director known for controversial films, kidnapped and killed her. Dreyfuss wrote a confession letter to his friend David Richards, the founder of Richards Majestic Film Studio, shortly after murdering Leonora. In it, he called the murder a mistake and said he had planned to torture her slowly so he could understand suffering and become a better artist. Art. And with that explanation out of the way, he simply carried on with life as if nothing had happened. He continued making movies, received a star on the Vinewood Walk of Fame, and lived in comfort for decades while Leonora's case remained unsolved. For some unknown reason, David Richards never turned the letter over to the police. Instead, he tore it into 50 pieces that ended up scattered all over Los Santos. These letter scraps can be collected by any of the three main characters, but the game never tells you they exist. There's no mission or notification. You just come across glowing pieces of paper tucked away in random corners of Los Santos as you explore. Some pieces are on rooftops that require helicopters to reach, while others are tucked away in alleys or hidden on docks. Once you find all 50 pieces, the game puts together the full 4-page letter so you can read Dreyfuss's entire confession. Collecting all the scraps unlocks a mission called A Starlet in Vinewood, but only Franklin, one of the three main characters, can actually complete it. The mission sends you to Peter Dreyfuss's mansion in the Vinewood Hills, where you find the director meditating in his backyard. At first, Dreyfuss thinks you're there for some kind of explicit encounter, but it doesn't take long for him to realize that's not the case. The second you bring up the photo, Dreyfuss panics and bolts for his SUV, trying to escape. If you mess with his car beforehand by slashing the tires or moving it, he has to run away on foot, making him an easier target. After you finish him off, a news article will appear on the in-game internet reporting that the famous director, Peter Dreyfuss, has been killed. But getting to that point is completely optional. The whole investigation can be ignored. In fact, most players finish GTA 5 without ever collecting a single letter scrap or even finding out Leonora Johnson even existed. Jolene Cranley-Evans' ghost. On Mount Gordo, a mountain in the northeast region of Blaine County, something strange happens every night between 11 p.m. and midnight. A female shadowy figure appears on the edge of a cliff, dressed in white with long black hair falling over her face. Beneath her bare feet, the word Jock is smeared across the rocks in what looks like blood. Get too close and she vanishes into thin air, leaving nothing behind but the writing. Her name is Jolene Cranley-Evans, and she's been haunting this spot since 1978. Jolene's story starts with her marriage to Jock Cranley, a guy with big dreams of becoming a Hollywood stuntman. Jock wanted to leave their home in Blaine County and move to Los Santos to chase his dream, but Jolene wasn't on board. Her parents were getting older and needed looking after, and she was also busy running her family's guest house, so packing up and leaving just wasn't an option. Over time, this back and forth started to wear down their marriage. Even with the tension, they stayed together and tried to make it work. Then, on March 14, 1978, things took a dark turn. Jock and Jolene went for a walk together on Mount Gordo, but Jolene never made it back home. Her body was later found at the bottom of the cliffs near the El Gordo lighthouse. Jock was immediately arrested on suspicion of murder, but without any physical evidence or witnesses, the case fell apart. He was released without being charged and walked away a free man. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't, because Jolene's ghost started appearing at the exact spot where she went over the edge, standing on what many assume is the name of her killer written in blood on the rocks. Since she only appears in darkness and vanishes if you get too close, the best way to see her clearly is to use a sniper rifle scope from a distance. Position yourself on the opposite hillside, zoom in, and you'll get a full view of her standing on the cliff edge with the bloody writing at her feet. If you think you've heard the worst of it, you're wrong. There's more. Jock Cranley is still around in the game's present day. He's a famous stuntman now, which is exactly what he wanted to be when Jolene was holding him back in Blaine County. He's also running for governor of San Andreas, and you can hear his campaign ads on the radio.
Hi, I'm Jock Cranley, former Vinewood stuntman, actor, and now highly qualified candidate for governor. I hate immigrants, gays, the crippled. God, I really hate the crippled. I can't stand unions, cops, old ladies. The thing is, at least you know I'm Most people fall in love with a politician, and as soon as they are elected, they say, wow, this guy's...
In these ads, he dedicates his career to his late wife and talks about how much he misses her, while also mentioning that she wanted to destroy his dreams of success and happiness. He plays the grieving widower while admitting in the same breath that she was an obstacle in his path. The whole setup is Rockstar's way of telling a story about someone who literally got away with murder and turned it into a successful career after the justice system failed to hold him accountable. Epsilon Program Cult. There's a truck sitting in the desert near Raton Canyon, a valley in Blaine County. Inside is a small blue booklet with strange instructions. It says to raise your left hand, read out some words, and then someone will come find you. If you follow the instructions, you'll be pulled into a ritual you can't back out of. And what happens next involves wearing bright blue robes for 10 days straight. By the time you're done, you'll either walk away $2 million richer or drive off in a rusty tractor worth about $500. This is the Epsilon program, GTA 5's version of a celebrity cult that drains your bank account while promising you spiritual growth. The Epsilon program shows up throughout the GTA series, but in GTA 5, only Michael, one of the three main characters, can actually join. The cult is led by a man named Chris Fromage. He believes in something called paradigms, which are basically different levels of existence. Members greet each other by saying Kiflon, and they worship a god named Craft. Everything they own is painted in a specific shade of blue, from their cars to their clothes and even buildings. To join, Michael has to visit the Epsilon website and take a survey about his identity. Of course, the answers don't actually matter. Once that's done, the website tells him to find a red truck in Raton Canyon, raise his left hand, and say the phrase. Moments later, Michael gets knocked out by two members of the cult and wakes up in the desert. From there, the missions begin, and each one involves him giving the cult something or doing something ridiculous for them. The first few missions are mostly about donations. Michael pays $500 to join, and then $5,000 more for enlightenment. Later, he has to pay $25,000 for special blue robes, which he has to wear for 10 straight in-game days without changing clothes. When things start to ramp up, one mission forces him to run 5 miles through the Grand Sonora Desert, a large desert area in Blaine County, while wearing the robes. You can either actually run for miles in the game, or rubber band your controller and walk away for 30 minutes while Michael jogs in circles. Either way, it wastes your time, while cult members congratulate you for your dedication. After all the donations and ridiculous tasks comes the final mission. Chris Fromage personally meets with Michael and hands him a car filled with $2.1 million in cash. He says this money needs to be driven to a helicopter so it can be flown to the Cayman Islands, a place where people hide money to avoid taxes. Michael is supposed to deliver the car and complete his path to enlightenment. But there's a twist. The game gives you a choice. You can follow orders and hand over the money, which gets you a rusty old tractor as your reward, or you can steal the car and keep the $2.1 million for yourself. If you steal it, armed cult members will chase you in vehicles and a helicopter while you try to escape. Once you get away, you'll get an angry phone call from Chris.
You traitor! After all we've done for you, you can consider your enlightenment revoked, you son of a...
And you can consider this my refund.
Don't you realize how powerful I am? I make or break Vinewood careers. I will destroy you.
Gotta go, brother. Kithlam.
You are unsavable. You will be the fertilizer of the 10th paradigm.
After that phone call, it just ends. No consequences show up later. So in the end, leaving a cult with $2 million plays out the same way as joining one. It doesn't really lead anywhere. Tier 2. Altruist cult Cannibals. You're playing as Trevor, driving through the mountains north of Blaine County with a hitchhiker in your passenger seat. They think you're taking them home, but the road keeps narrowing as you climb into the Chiliad mountain state wilderness. Trees block out the sun, and soon you're turning onto a dirt path that leads to a wooden gate built into a log wall, with watchtowers on both sides. That's when they realize something's off, but it's already too late. You've arrived at the Altruist camp, and you just made $1,000. So what exactly is this place, and why are you getting paid to drop people off there? Behind the gate is a cannibal cult called the Altruists, living deep in the wilderness away from everyone else. Most of them are elderly and walk around in very little clothing. A few rough shacks make up their living space, and armed guards watch over the place. If you show up uninvited, they'll shoot you on sight. The cult follows a belief system they call altruism, which has absolutely nothing to do with the actual meaning of the word. They think their generation is better than everyone else, and that people under 40 only exist to be eaten. Their website, which can actually be accessed in the game at altruistunite.com, is filled with messages written in Morse code that explain their beliefs. We'll get to that later. The first mention of the cult in the game comes after completing the mission Nervous Ron. Trevor gets a text from his friend Ron saying there's a cult in the mountains that wants lost souls in exchange for money. Ron mentions they want people for dinner and are obsessed with young blood, making it clear what happens to anyone delivered there. Each person Trevor delivers earns him $1,000. He can bring in hitchhikers, drunk couples, or other people he picks up during random encounters. The cult members meet him at the gate, take the person inside, and hand over the cash. You can deliver up to 4 people this way. After the 4th delivery, things take a pretty intense turn. The cult turns on Trevor. It's clear that the intention is to make him their next meal, but lucky for Trevor, he manages to break free. He then has to fight his way out of the compound, killing every cult member he can find. After the shootout, you can search the camp and find 4 briefcases, each containing $25,000, for a total of $100,000. Not bad, especially considering Trevor only made $3,000 for delivering people, and would have needed to make 97 more deliveries just to hit the same amount. Cement Shoe's body. You're diving off the coast near Fort Zancudo, scanning the ocean floor for hidden packages or shipwrecks, when something odd catches your eye. As you get closer, the details come into focus. It's a person, or at least what's left of one. She's hooded, bound at the wrists, and her feet are locked in concrete blocks. She's been down here since 1949, courtesy of Fred Quincy, head of Fred's Pictures, a cartoon studio in Vinewood. He explained everything in a confession later he wrote that same year. He ran his studio with a carefully polished public image, much like Walt Disney's operation, producing animated films for kids while keeping everything else out of sight. The woman in the ocean was his secretary, and she made the mistake of learning too much about what he did when people got in his way. The whole thing started when a filmmaker named Isaac, who worked with Quincy at Fred's Pictures, decided he wanted to leave and do live-action films with another studio. Quincy didn't take the news well. After drinking and getting into an argument with him, he killed him and buried the body in an abandoned mine shaft in the hills near Great Chaparral. That should have been the end of it. But then the secretary found out what happened. She threatened to expose Quincy. And according to the confession letter, that's when he decided to get rid of her too. He killed her to protect his secret, and more importantly, his legacy. Afterward, he wrapped her body, cemented her feet, and dumped her into the ocean where he thought no one would ever find her. The confession letter was sent to David Richards, father of Solomon Richards, who now runs Richards Majestic Studios. For reasons nobody really explains, he was the kind of person dangerous people felt comfortable confessing things to, including things that probably shouldn't have been written down at all. Quincy sent the letter in August 1949, openly admitting to both murders, while also making it very clear that Richards should keep his mouth shut. And just to make sure that message landed, he offered to buy a 5% stake in Richards Majestic for $450,000, which was well above market value. The purchase was Quincy's way of tying Richards to him, and making sure that if one of them went down, the other wouldn't come out clean. You can only discover this mystery as Michael, and only if you previously played the old-gen version of the game on PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 with your account linked to Rockstar Social Club. The mission has no markers or notifications. You have to stumble across 4 messages carved into walls around Vinewood that hint at what happened. One message near the Oriental Theater reads, "Ain't no mystery. They drowned her because of what she knew." Another at City Hall says, "Fred makes cartoons for kids." Funny thing considering what he did. The woman's body can be found underwater near a sunken tugboat off Fort Zancudo at any time. But finding all 4 wall carvings first unlocks access to Solomon Richards' office at Richards Majestic. On Solomon's desk is the confession letter from Fred Quincy. It explains everything and reveals the location of Isaac's body. After you get the info, you'll need to break into the abandoned mine shaft in Great Chaparral using explosives. Inside, you'll find Isaac's body with a film reel lying near his feet. Once both bodies are found and the confession letter has been read in Solomon's office at Richards Majestic, the mystery is solved. The Infinity Killer. There's a rock in the desert near Sandy Shores with a rhyme carved into it. It reads, 1 is done, 2 was fun, 3 tried to run, 4 called mom. And it keeps going all the way to 8. Each line describes how a different victim died. The man who wrote it wasn't picking people at random. He had a number in mind, and he wasn't going to stop until he reached it. His name was Mural Abrams, but people call him the Infinity Killer. Mural lived most of his life in Sandy Shores without causing any trouble. He was born in 1947, and for the most part, he seemed normal until something changed in his late 50s. He developed a severe mental illness that led him to fixate on the number 8 and the infinity symbol, which he believed were the same thing. He'd write messages claiming that 8 is just infinity turned upright, and that's how he got his nickname. Over time, that obsession grew into something darker, and he became convinced he needed to kill 8 people as part of a ritual to become a god, and then he actually went out and did it. In December 1999, Mural killed a total of 8 men while they were out jogging. The victims were all single young men. He wrapped each body in plastic, tied heavy weights to them, and dumped them across the ocean floor off the northern coast. The game doesn't tell you where those bodies are, but Mural left enough clues to point you in the right direction. They are everywhere if you know what you're looking for. Inside his house in Sandy Shores, he wrote, "There will be 8," in black ink on one wall, and 8 is just infinity stood up on another. Outside the house, he carved the disturbing rhyme describing each victim's death into a large white rock, with all these clues pointing directly at him. It didn't take too long for the police to catch up. The police arrested Abrams not long after the 8th victim disappeared, though the game never really explains how they tied him to the murders. After his arrest, Mural was sent to Bolingbroke Penitentiary in Blaine County to await trial. While he was there, he left one final clue on a wall in the prison yard. It read, "Where water meets land and fire once spewed forth, there the infinite 8 shall stay until I return." Underneath it, he sketched a rough map of the peninsula and islands north of Mount Chiliad, the tallest mountain in the game. He was pointing straight to the bodies, just in a way that required some thinking. Mural never made it to trial. He died in prison in December 2004 at age 57, 5 years after committing the murders. He never confessed to killing anyone, but he did admit to being obsessed with the number 8. The evidence against him was mostly circumstantial, since there were no bodies to prove the murders even happened. That is, until you solve his final riddle. The bodies are exactly where his clue says they'll be. They're scattered around the small islands north of Paleto Bay, lying on the ocean floor wrapped in burial plastic. You can't interact with them or report them to anyone, but at least you'll know they're there. Tier 3. Ghost Dog. A few minutes before this interaction, Franklin was taking a walk through the Vinewood Hills, minding his own business, when the yellow Labrador appeared on the path ahead, barking frantically. And now, things are about to get interesting.
Part of you would rather leave him there because he's a bit of but you're doing your civic duty. Okay, shit, show me.
Apparently, Franklin is some kind of dog whisperer, and his new canine friend is leading him into the hills to find whoever's in trouble. The person in trouble is Dom Beasley, an adrenaline junkie and hedge fund manager who's hanging from a tree by his parachute lines after a jump went wrong. When Franklin reaches the scene, he assumes the dog belongs to Dom, and it approached him to get help for its owner. But that wasn't the case. After that exchange, Franklin turns around expecting to see the dog again, but it's gone. Dom, meanwhile, insists he has no idea what Franklin is talking about. Still, Franklin helps cut him down. When Dom and Franklin part ways, it feels like the mystery of the dog's identity might stay unsolved, since Franklin doesn't see it again for a while. But later on, it reappears with another warning about Dom. The dog comes back in a mission called Uncalculated Risk, which only unlocks after you finish all the parachute jumps in the game. Franklin finds it barking near the Land Act Dam, a huge concrete structure in Blaine County. According to Franklin's interpretation this time, the dog is obligated to warn him about Dom, but doesn't actually care what happens to him anymore. It's done with his job, and wants to move on to a movie career more suited to its talents. The dog then leads Franklin to the top of the dam, where Dom is standing on the wrong side of the safety fence, preparing to jump without a parachute. When Franklin gets there, he tries to talk Dom out of it, but Dom jumps anyway and falls hundreds of feet to his death. After that encounter, the dog disappears for good, and Franklin never sees it again. The game itself never explains what the canine actually was, or why only Franklin could see and communicate with it. However, there are a few different theories out there. One of the most well-known involves an in-game website called acceptthechaos.com, run by a fake atheist organization. The site has a page called Want to Play God that shows you a happy family photo with 2 kids, their parents, and a yellow Labrador. When you click the button that says Click to Play God, the image transforms into a car crash scene showing the family's car crashed into a tree with everyone dead. The dog in the photo looks exactly like the one that appears to Franklin, which suggests the ghost dog might be the spirit of that family's pet. The game never confirms the connection between the website and the ghost dog, but the timing and appearance match up almost perfectly. Ursula, the serial killer hitchhiker. It's a quiet afternoon in Blaine County. You're playing as Franklin or Trevor, driving down to North Calafia Way south of Mount Chiliad when this happened.
I'm lost. Can you give me a ride home, please?
Sure, okay. Come on.
Finally, a nice man. Thank you.
The encounter doesn't strike you as odd because the game's full of random hitchhikers. She seems like just another person asking for a lift, but picking her up might be the worst decision you ever make. She says she's heading home near the El Gordo Lighthouse, and at first, the ride is normal enough. Then she starts talking, and what should have been a quiet 10-minute drive turns into one of the most uncomfortable conversations of your life. The woman's name is Ursula, and according to her, everyone around her tends to die in accidents. She says her mother recently passed away. Her gardener somehow fell off a cliff after getting sick, and the last person who gave her a ride choked to death on his own hand. Not exactly something you want to hear from a passenger in your car. She also casually mentions poisoning birds in her free time because they won't stop singing, like it's the most natural thing in the world. Her behavior starts to make a little more sense once she opens up about her past. Growing up, her mother tortured her by locking her in the basement and shaving her head. She was also forced to dress like a boy throughout her youth for reasons she never actually explains. After her mother's death, Ursula inherited the same house where she suffered all that abuse. She now lives alone there, which just makes the whole thing even creepier. You take her up on her offer and she becomes a contact for casual hookups, always meeting you at the marina in Sandy Shores. Trevor can also choose to deliver her to the Altruist cult Cannibals instead, and collect $1,000 for his trouble. One disturbing detail that players noticed is that after spending time with Ursula, the weather always turns to rain. Whether that's intentional or just coincidence, it fits her presence perfectly. Also, despite everything she says, the game never actually confirms she's actually killed anyone. Mount Chiliad Mystery Mural. Most players reach the top of Mount Chiliad and go straight for the view. But if you stop just before the observation deck and check the wall, you'll find something strange painted on it. A map of the mountain covered in symbols and lines. A UFO sits at the top, with a cracked egg, a jetpack, 5 X marks, and lightning bolts scattered across the design. The painting was spotted shortly after GTA 5 launched in 2013, and players immediately concluded that this cryptic mess was something worth obsessing over. Maybe there was a secret jetpack hidden somewhere in the game, just like the one from San Andreas. Or maybe the egg represented an alien encounter waiting to be discovered. Whatever it was, members of the community were determined to find out. Dedicated groups formed on Reddit, specifically subreddit Chiliad Mystery, where thousands of players shared theories and findings. They overlaid the mural onto the game map, examined every symbol carved into Mount Chiliad's surface, and explored underwater caves and abandoned mine shafts. Some players spent years on this hunt, convinced Rockstar had hidden something massive. Of all the symbols on the mural, the UFO at the top was the first one players actually figured out. If you hit 100% completion in single player and go back to Mount Chiliad during a thunderstorm at 3 a.m., a UFO shows up hovering above the mountain. It just sits there with green lights. You can't touch it, but you can clearly see it. Players later found 3 more UFOs around the map. 2 of them also need 100% completion, while one sits underwater off Paleto Bay and can be seen anytime. The jetpack and egg symbols, though, stayed a mystery for years. Rockstar didn't exactly clear things up either. In 2017, they added a jetpack in the Doomsday Heist update, and later on, an alien egg showed up in other missions. That was enough to convince people the mural had been hinting at future content the whole time. Apparently, Rockstar would rather leave clues on a wall than just make a trailer. Then, in 2024, former Rockstar designer Ben Hinchcliffe said in an interview that some hidden secrets in their games exist just to mess with players. He didn't confirm the mural was one of them, but at that point, he didn't really need to. More recently, a YouTuber named Gator Keys shared what a lot of people now see as the clearest explanation. The 5 X marks point to hidden spots around Mount Chiliad linked to UFO sightings. The jetpack suggests you need to get high enough to see them, and the egg represents going from 0 to 100% completion, which is what unlocks the main UFO hovering over Mount Chiliad. That's why in the mural there's a straight line connecting the egg directly to it. After more than a decade of theories, the answer turned out to be pretty simple. The mural is basically an instruction guide for finding UFOs. The insurance tracking theory. Have you ever wondered why in GTA 5, the cops always know when you've killed someone, even when there's literally no one around? You can drive out to the most remote part of Blaine County, kill a non-player character where absolutely nobody can see or hear you, and within seconds, the cops will be on your back. There are no witnesses, no security cameras, and no police nearby. So, how do they know? A Redditor named Gallagher222 came up with a theory that makes a little too much sense. He reckons insurance companies in Los Santos have everyone walking around with tracking chips inside them. These chips monitor where you are and whether your heart is still beating all day, every day. The second someone dies, the chip flatlines, pings the insurance company's system, and the cops get an automatic alert with the exact location. Doesn't matter if it happened in a back alley at 3 a.m. or on top of Mount Chiliad. The deal, according to the theory, is that citizens agreed to all of this in exchange for cheaper insurance rates. Your health, your location, your heartbeat, all of it handed over to corporations who are watching around the clock. As unbelievable as it sounds, the game actually backs this up. There's a company in Los Santos called Trackify that makes tracking chips. At one point, a guy named Jeff Harlingford is trying to get one installed in his wife's spine, and nobody in the conversation bats an eye. That's how normal this stuff is in the GTA universe. It also explains why hospitals in Los Santos are dirt cheap. You take 15 bullets, stumble through the doors half dead, and walk out a couple of dollars later like nothing happened. That kind of healthcare doesn't come free, which is why you're paying for it with your privacy. It's a dystopian nightmare hidden in the game mechanics, but when you really think about it, it's not that far-fetched. In the real world, insurance companies already track people through apps, wearables, and even their cars. GTA just takes that idea and pushes it a few steps further. Tier 4. Thelma and Louise Easter Egg. You're flying a helicopter over the Chiliad Mountain State Wilderness near Raton Canyon when you spot something strange on a cliff top below. A group of police cars has surrounded a convertible tornado at the edge of a cliff. The officers have their weapons drawn, and they're shouting at 2 women inside the car. Then, all of a sudden, the convertible's engine roars to life, and before anyone can react, it launches off the cliff. This is Rockstar's tribute to the 1991 film Thelma and Louise, and it plays out the same way every single night between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. in-game if you know where to look. The scene only happens if you're in a helicopter approaching the location during that 1 hour window. If you're on the ground or arrive too late, you'll miss it. The whole event is designed to recreate the film's famous ending, where the two main characters chose to drive off a cliff at the Grand Canyon rather than surrender to police. Rockstar replicated down to specific details. The car is a convertible tornado with guitars and a large sombrero sitting in the back seat, just like in the movie. And the police maintain the standoff positions until the car accelerates toward the edge. After the car goes over, the outcome varies. Sometimes it'll explode on impact at the bottom of the canyon. Other times it survives the fall, and both women climb out and run off into the wilderness. If you block the car's path before it reaches the cliff, the driver honks frantically until you move. The police also hold their position until the path clears, apparently committed to maintaining historical accuracy, even when you're actively ruining the scene. The car itself can be retrieved and kept if it doesn't explode after the fall, though it's the same convertible tornado model that appears in a few other places in the game. Frozen alien under bridge. It's your first mission of the game, and you're in Ludendorff, a small snowy town in North Yankton. The year is 2004, and you're trying to get away after a bank robbery that didn't go as planned. Michael, Trevor, and Brad are in the getaway car together, and the police are closing in fast. As you race down the road, you come up to a bridge over a frozen creek that most players drive straight over and never look back. If you're not one of those people, and you turn right and go down the slope to the frozen river underneath that bridge, you'll find something that has absolutely nothing to do with the heist. Sitting there in the clear ice, perfectly preserved, is a dead alien. You have approximately 5 or 6 seconds to look at it before the game thinks you're running away from the mission and fails you. But it's there, and it's not just a random model. The alien looks exactly like the ones you see later in the game. Same body as the actors in alien costumes at the movie studio in Los Santos, and the same design as the aliens in Michael's drug trips when he smokes too much with his son. Rockstar reused the same model for all of them. So either this is meant to be a real alien that crashed here years ago, or someone in an alien suit ended up dead in a frozen river in North Yankton. Either way, it's a weird thing to hide in the very first mission of the game. What makes it even stranger is that it doesn't go anywhere. Ludendorff only appears twice in the entire game. Once here during the opening robbery in 2004, and again 9 years later, during the mission Bury the Hatchet, when Michael returns to visit Brad's grave. If you go back to that same bridge during the 2013 mission, the alien is still there in the exact spot under the ice. Ludendorff itself doesn't help the feeling either. The whole place feels off from the start. Everything's buried in snow. The population says 918 people, and most of the buildings are just empty shells you can't even enter because Rockstar never finished the interiors. The town only exists for these 2 moments. Because of that, people started trying to connect the alien to something bigger. Maybe it ties into the Mount Chiliad mystery. Maybe the mural is pointing straight at it. Or maybe it's proof aliens showed up before the story ever begins. Some even think it was part of a larger storyline Rockstar just never followed through on. But over a decade later, nothing has ever come from it. No secret mission, no hidden reward, no explanation. The alien is still just there, frozen under the ice, exactly where you left it. If you want to see it for yourself, you can replay the opening mission from the pause menu. When you reach the bridge, turn off the road and head down toward the river. Get out of the car, aim your weapon, zoom in on the ice. Just beneath the surface, you'll see it. The Peyote plant hallucinations. You're exploring the wilderness near Mount Chiliad when you spot a small cactus with a white flower on top, growing between some rocks. An on-screen prompt tells you to press a button to eat it. You do, and within seconds, the screen floods with bright colors. Everything goes white, and when you come to, you're staring at the world from about 2 feet off the ground. You try to move forward and realize you're now a dog. This is what happens when you consume one of the 27 peyote plants scattered across GTA 5's map. The plants are hallucinogenic collectibles that temporarily transform you into random animals, and once you eat one, you have no control over which creature you become. The plant makes animal noises when you're near it, giving you a hint, but that's the only warning you get before the transformation kicks in. If you find the plant on land and eat it, you can turn into cats, dogs of various breeds, chickens, rabbits, or birds like crows and seagulls. In the ocean, the plants transform you into sharks, dolphins, stingrays, or fish. Each animal comes with its own set of abilities. Birds can fly around the map using controls similar to piloting a plane, and they can defecate on command, which somehow sets off car alarms. 4-legged animals can bark, meow, or make whatever sound that species produces. Sea creatures let you explore underwater without worrying about oxygen. Despite the transformation, non-player characters react to you exactly the same way they would if you were human, which leads to some pretty ridiculous situations. Walk up to a gang member as a cat, and they'll talk to you like normal. Push things a little, and they'll start shooting. Attack someone as a mountain lion, and the police will show up like it's a regular crime scene. You can actually get a wanted level as an animal, and the cops will shoot a poodle with the same energy they'd go after Trevor. If you think that's as weird as it gets, you'll be surprised. There's a specific peyote plant in the backyard of Franklin's old house in Strawberry that turns you into Chop. For anyone who forgot, Chop is Franklin's Rottweiler from the story, the one that helps track people during missions. As Chop, you can run around attacking non-playable characters and even other players in GTA Online, and the dog actually takes people down pretty fast. But if you cause enough chaos, the police still show up. So that whole unstoppable animal feeling doesn't last very long. The hallucination ends when your animal dies, if you wander into water as a land animal, or if you just decide to end it yourself. Once it's over, you'll snap back into your own body right next to the plant, sometimes still stuck in it for a second, flapping your arms like wings or crawling on all fours before your brain catches up and you realize what you're doing. Rockstar never really explains why these plants exist, and they don't serve any real purpose beyond the novelty of seeing Los Santos from a completely different angle. You can't use weapons, you can't pick anything up, and you're just as easy to kill as you were before. Tier 5. The Burial Random Event. You're driving down a dirt road north of Paleto Bay when two red dots appear on your minimap. As you get closer, you spot a pickup truck parked on the side of the road. Two armed men are standing at the back, and between them is a woman tied up on the ground. Both men are holding shovels. This is one of GTA 5's random events that can trigger with any of the three protagonists, although it doesn't always appear when you pass through the area. Unlike most encounters in the game, this one doesn't give you much time to consider your options. The moment you get close enough to be seen, the men open fire. The woman who is tied up is Antonia Bottino, daughter of Sammy Sonny Bottino. Sammy is a former underboss in the Gambetti crime family, one of the major mafia organizations in the GTA universe. The two men standing over her are his enemies. Apparently, burying his daughter alive is how they've chosen to settle their score with him. You can keep driving and let them finish what they started, or you can return fire, kill both men, and untie Antonia. After saving her, she'll ask you to drive her to Vinewood Hills, where someone named Beppe is waiting to pick her up. During the drive, she'll explain what just happened. Apparently, her father was wanted for murder in Vice City, and he was arrested in 2011. But instead of facing trial, he took a plea deal and turned informant, giving up other members of the Gambetti family to save himself. He's now sitting in a 5-star prison cell under police protection, while she deals with the consequences. After you drop Antonia off in Vinewood Hills, your phone rings a few minutes later. Her father had just wired $60,000 into your account. It's the largest single payout from any random event in the game. The bank statement lists the sender as Dario Bottino. It's unclear whether that's an alias or someone else in the family handling the payment. If you're playing as Trevor, there's another option. Instead of taking her to Vinewood Hills, you can hand her over to the Altruist cult for $1,000. That means giving up the $60,000 reward and delivering a mob boss's daughter straight to Cannibals. Ghost Dog at Cemetery. A dog walks into the Hill Valley Church Cemetery every morning at 11 a.m., moving through the rows of headstones like it knows exactly where it's going. If you follow it, the dog leads you to one specific grave with flowers laid beside it. Then it sits down and refuses to move. Nobody in the game tells you who's buried there or why it keeps coming back, but the routine never changes. Same time, same grave, every single day. Before you get confused, this isn't the same ghost dog that led Franklin to Dom Beasley. GTA 5 just has multiple supernatural dogs, each with its own tragic backstory. This particular dog doesn't talk to anyone or lead people to adrenaline junkies about to die. It just sits there and mourns. Rockstar actually based this behavior on real-life events from 19th century Edinburgh, Scotland. It's a reference to Greyfriars Bobby, a Skye Terrier who became famous for spending 14 years guarding his owner's grave. His owner, John Gray, was a night watchman for the Edinburgh City Police who died in 1858 and was buried at Greyfriars Kirkyard. After his death, Bobby refused to leave the cemetery and stayed by the grave every day for the rest of his life. The Lord Provost of Edinburgh even paid for his license and collar so he could remain there legally, and Bobby kept this vigil for 14 years until he died in 1872. When Bobby died, he was buried just inside the gate of Greyfriars Kirkyard, only a few meters from John Gray's grave, so they could stay close even in death. The story became so famous that a statue was erected in Bobby's honor, and the tale has been retold in books, movies, and now video games. Rockstar North, the studio that made GTA 5, is based in Edinburgh, which explains why they included this tribute in the game. The dog in the cemetery doesn't have a name, and the headstone it visits doesn't have any readable inscription. There's no notification or mission marker telling you this exists. Altruist website Morse code. You're in a Los Santos safe house late at night, scrolling through your phone after a friend mentions there's something strange on altruistsunite.com. Curious, you open the in-game browser and type in the address. When the page loads, it looks like your screen is broken. There are no headlines, no welcome message, no normal text. Just long strings of Morse code that make no sense unless you take the time to translate them. That website belongs to the Altruist cult, the same cannibalistic group Trevor was supplying with hitchhikers earlier in the game. Even though they reject modern society and everything that comes with it, they somehow still manage to run a website. And the entire thing is written in Morse code. Back in 2013, players spent hours decoding it character by character. The translated message is long and disturbing, and the heading reads, "The Industrial Revolution has been a disaster to the stability of the human race." That line is almost word for the opening of Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, mailed bombs to people across the United States for years, trying to fight technology. Not exactly the kind of source material you expect to find hiding in a video game. The rest of the website lays out their entire philosophy. They claim that society's belief of younger generations being better than the older generations will end civilization, and that humans are naturally nocturnal animals who suffer mental problems from sunlight and technology. They also bring up hypervitaminosis D, which is actually a real condition where too much vitamin D from sun exposure damages your heart and kidneys. Then they go on to argue that people under 40 only exist to be consumed by older generations, and that altruism is the highest calling for society. That's already disturbing on its own, but Rockstar didn't stop at just writing a creepy message. The Altruist website closely mirrors the real Heaven's Gate site, the same group where 39 people died in 1997 believing a spaceship was hiding behind a comet. The simple layout, weird manifesto text, and overall tone all match. But the Morse code makes the Altruist website unique, since you have to actually work to read their message. Rockstar really went the extra mile here. Instead of just throwing in a creepy group in the woods, they built out a full belief system, wrote a detailed manifesto, encoded it in Morse code, and hid the whole thing behind a website most players would never even find. That's the disturbing GTA 5 iceberg. Rockstar buried serial killers, cannibal manifestos, and unexplained mysteries in places most players will never think to look. The deeper you go, the more you realize how much detail went into content most people will never see. And this is only part of it. There's still more hidden across Los Santos, which makes you wonder what else is sitting out there waiting to be found. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more icebergs like this.